All right, I'm excited to introduce our next panel. And move this forth here. So here we have stars in a constellation of friends, family, and community. So most young people are blissfully unaware of their impact on the world and how the world impacts them. But this can be particularly challenging for young men. And young men are also brothers, sons, grandsons, nephews, cousins, classmates, teammates, and more. In this next panel, we're talking to folks who are helping all of us make sense of young men and ourselves in this particular moment. Our moderator will be Kenneth, Ebie. You guys can come out as I call you. Our moderator will be Kenneth Ebie of Ebie Strategies. It's an economic development and capital access strategy firm, and Ebie previously led New York City's Black Entrepreneurs NYC, also known as BNYC, initiative, and is a sought-after thought leader on municipal economic development. Let's help everyone make some money, right? And entrepreneurship, and his clients include the City of New Haven, the New York State's Business Growth Accelerator Program, and the Smart City Expo USA. We have Mike de la Rocha, an author, musician, and entrepreneur. He's recognized for his work at the intersection of art, activism, and healing. He co-founded Revolve Impact, an award-winning agency, and Torpedo Coffee with Homeboy Industries. Mikey was named one of Good Magazine's top 100 people changing the world. And his memoir, his new book, Sacred Lessons, Teaching My Father How to Love, is a USA Today bestseller. We have Niobe Way. Niobe is an author and professor of developmental psychology at NYU, and her work shapes education, tech, and policy all around human connection. She studies youth social emotional development in both the US and China. She's also the author of 2 books about the inner lives of boys, Deep Secrets, and last year's Rebels with a Cause. Rebels, plural. And then we have Ashanti Branch. Ashanti is a leader in youth mental health and education reform with over 20 years helping schools build safer, more connected communities. He's a 2023 US Surgeon General Medallion recipient, a 4 times TEDx speaker, a podcaster, and a Fulbright Fellow who champions healing and authenticity through workshops, media, and storytelling.
All right, good morning, everyone. It is really an honor and a privilege to be here. I want to, first of all, give a shout out and a tremendous thank you to this brilliant, dynamic woman, Jana, for bringing us all together and for doing such an amazing and brilliant job of leading in this important space. So thank you for your leadership. I'm really honored to moderate this conversation. If I do my best job, you're going to be hearing less of this and more of these voices. This day is all about connection and connectivity, and so I do want to honor the wisdom and the insights from our prior panel with this panel. I just want to ask if each of you might want to share in the first couple minutes any reflections that you have on that dynamic panel that preceded us. We can start with you, Niobe.
Yeah, there we go. So I wanted to respond to all 3 because they were really beautiful, really powerful, made me think in new ways in what they were saying. So first of all, I don't remember the names. I teach 50 students a semester. I never remember names. Who was the first person from Oberlin? Okay. So I grew up in Oberlin. I went to Oberlin High. Where is he? He's in the back. Okay. And I know all about Oberlin, and if you're from Oberlin, you know what I mean. I am Oberlin. Everything I do is Oberlin. So it was really gratifying to hear what he said. And then what he said, it was consistent with so much of the work, which is that whole notion of focusing on showing up and being who you want young men to be, boys and young men to be, and embodying it, even as a woman, embodying it. And we can talk about more what that means, but I think that showing up in how we present, not just men, but also women and non-gender conforming people, how we show up is so important to raising healthy children, including boys and men. The second point around, the second person around nature, it reminded me of a comment by Peter Buffett many years ago, Warren Buffett's son, when I founded with Pedro Noguera the Project for the Advancement of Our Common Humanity. And he said, when you talk about common humanity, you can't leave out nature, because you can't connect to people if you're not connected to nature. And it just was so profound to me, this was about 10 years ago, about how much connection to nature allows you to connect to people. And the final one, Peter, I do remember Peter because it's the same name as my father. His humor, he's a very, very socially skilled turn-up, because his humor is the connector. And it reminds me of students in my class who identify as on the spectrum or autistic. They oftentimes say to me, you know, what you guys call social skills is bullshit. It's basically being nice when you don't think you don't want to be nice, or they're being mean to you, or saying things you don't believe, or saying something's funny that's not funny. And they said, we're actually more socially skilled because we're truth tellers. And when you tell a racist joke or a sexist joke, we don't laugh because it's not funny. So I just want to say that in some ways I had a talk with Kimmy that we have to reframe not just the kid, we have to reframe the language that we use to describe people. And what we call socially skilled needs to be challenged, right, in terms of social skills. So that was a very long-winded response, and I apologize about that, but I wanted to connect to it.
Love that. Yes, Ashanti.
One of the things that, as a former teacher, I really resonated with was when Manny talked about, you know, giving young people, different young men, 100% respect from the get-go. Like I'm here to give you respect, and knowing that I have to earn it from you 1 inch at a time. And I think sometimes teachers, as a former teacher and a person who trained teachers think that students are supposed to come in respecting them. And they think they earned it because they got a degree, or they're the teacher, their name is on the wall, but they don't understand that relationships are built one connection at a time. And if a student comes in day one and he doesn't like you, it doesn't mean you can't work through that relationship. But if you take him not liking you as you not liking him, then you basically both lose. And I think that's what I want educators to know.
Yeah. For me, I just really wanted to say thank you to Camping to Connect, because in this moment in time when so much is unraveling, the original storytelling is actually around a campfire. All of us, regardless of where we come from, ancestrally, our homes, we're land-based people. And the healing that we need is actually found in nature. It's the equalizer, like was said, but also whatever you really need. That's why culturally they say, if you have a problem, go and sit in front of a tree, because that tree has withstand wars, has withstand so much that the knowledge is innate within the roots of that tree. And so much that we can learn from, we can literally learn by being next to a stream or just being outside of this concrete jungle. Yeah. And so that for me is like, it's accessible to anyone, and that's the medicine I think right now in this time we really need.
Wonderful, wonderful and profound. And thank you. I don't know if we can set a pattern, but I would love to hear reflections on this panel after we're done as well. So what are we here to talk about? We're going to be diving into opportunities to model and help young men see themselves within context, right? In their communities, in their relationships, the various roles that they have in the world. And what I like to do is, with these panels, I'm a social impact strategist. I know people are familiar with think tanks. I prefer do tanks. And I think part of getting the right action in place is thinking and talking about it, but then actually moving forward with some action. So what I like to do is start with the kind of the low-hanging fruit. Where are the opportunities that you have all, from your experience, seen, for us to really kind of identify this, this issue we speak about, which is a crisis of connection. Some speak about it as a crisis of boys and men here in this society. What is one overlooked opportunity? I'll start with you, Mike, that each of you sees in the current approaches to fostering healthy relationships for boys, and that could have a significant impact on the outcomes we're seeing.
Well, I'll say the last 4 months I've been absolutely blessed to be touring this country. I've gone to over 20 cities and 6 states. I've been able to sit in front of and with 6,000 people, predominantly men. And what I will say is, regardless whether it's the Midwest or the Deep South or the coast, is that men are suffering in silence. And there's an immense amount of grief, unprocessed grief, that we don't know how to release. And what I've seen as the opportunity is these rates of, like it was mentioned before, suicide, depression, this crisis of masculinity or loneliness, is because that's all we see. And I was really interested to be here because this is in Ad Week and everything else, because that's this predominant narrative in stories, since we're talking about stories. But the other story that I'm seeing and bearing witness to is like this room. There's a lot of men right now that are actually like very consciously saying, how am I gonna be a better person in the world? How am I gonna be like a father that tells his son, I love you, publicly? How am I gonna go and learn about the importance of therapy or meditation? So there's this other story that's happening. And so since I'm in the business of storytelling, I'll share one story as an opportunity. I was speaking in Albuquerque, New Mexico 2 months ago. And I got picked up by an Uber driver. I'm a proud son of an immigrant. My family's from Mexico. Today is Mexican Independence Day, so all the Mexicans shout out. But this man picks me up. He's a second, third generation Mexican Chicano who was in this country before that part of the world was even the United States. He sees my name tag. He says, oh, you're speaking. Where are you from? And I'm like, I'm from Los Angeles, and this is 2 months ago. And he says, oh, you guys are in riots and under fire. And this was right when ICE started coming into our neighborhood in our city. And I said, no, if whatever you're seeing on the news, that's 2 blocks of a 500 square city. And the only violence you're seeing is coming from the police and the military, not from the peaceful protesters. And his response, and I'll never forget this, his response was, well, if they didn't come here illegally, I wouldn't have a problem with it. Now, I grew up as a movement kid, and my blood was like, whoa, I wanted to react. And I said, well, we can all agree that the immigration system is broken, but can we also agree that hunting, kidnapping, and deporting people whose only crime was a better life is not the way to fix this system? But his response is the telling opportunity. His response was, well, why do you think I'm driving this Uber? They're taking my job. And I said, what? And then I go, help me understand you. I want to understand this thinking. And he looks at me and goes, I don't want to talk to you no more. And I said, no. I genuinely, compassionately want to know. No judgment, no shame, I want to know. I don't want to talk to you anymore. I'm an organizer, you all. And I was like, I still have 8 minutes left on my Uber. So I had to figure this out. The long story of it is I said, can I talk to you about my book? It's about fathers and sons. It's about the pain we carry. For the next 8 minutes, we had this most profound conversation. And at the end, he goes, what's your name again? Mike Del Rocha. He goes, hold on a second. He buys my book on the spot because I was willing to lean in, and I was willing to suspend my first judgment. And in this moment of so much division and fear, like we are all hurting, and how do we find the compassion and the love and the joy to connect with folks that just feel alone? In a time when changing gender norms, economic uncertainty, for him, he was like, the advent of AI and technology is taking me away. I might not even be an Uber driver. because of Waymo and everything else. So there's real things happening, but if we can find that common ground, we can move forward.
I love that. Thank you, Mark. Ashanti.
One of the things that I experience with young men in my work, and definitely, and you speaking about that driver who's as a man, I've been on a men's team since 2010. So for 15 years, every Tuesday night, 7 to 10 p.m., I circle up with a group of men, a team of men, and I have a space where I don't have to have it all figured out. And I think the beauty of that is I meet so many men who don't have that, and even when I recommend it, they're like, why would I do that? Why would I sit in a circle with a bunch of men? And I think that because of the rules that they've been under, and I think it's kind of closely connected to how I began this work. And I think in 2015, our work was in a documentary called The Mask You Live In. And The Mask You Live In was about masculinity, American masculinity, and how this hyper-masculine narrative is hurting our boys. And what we created in that documentary, which I didn't know I was creating, but I was working with some boys in Oakland, California, we just gave them a space to talk about what they were going through. But what I knew about these young men is they weren't going to talk about it, because I had tried talking about emotions with them before, and they would rather start a fight. They would rather make fun of somebody's shoes, laugh at somebody's hair, talk about somebody's situation, so that they derail the conversation because talking about emotions was scary. And so what we did is we just said, the scene in the documentary that you will see is, and just inviting them to write 3 words about what are the things that you let the world see. What are 3 things about you that you let the world see? No name, just put 3 words. And then when you think about if you call that the mask, is here's what I let the world see about me, then what happens on the back of the mask is what I don't let people see, what I don't talk about. And that was the first time we did it in that documentary. It wasn't a movement, it wasn't a thing, it was just me trying to figure out how do I get them to open up. And I knew that talking about it wasn't going to be the answer. I got them to write it at least. And that has become the Million Mask movement. And what I've seen over and over with thousands of young people and teachers and educators and men is that, man, when we can just listen a little bit longer, we see what we're seeing, we see the behavior. When teachers see a kid acting up, I think Peter said, you're getting kicked out of class because you're disruptive, right? We kick them out of class. They just want connection. So we're actually putting them further away from what they actually want, but what they're asking for it in is the most unconnected way. They're acting like they don't want to be there, but actually they need attention. They want attention. And sometimes negative attention is attention. Actually, all the time, negative attention is attention if you don't get it positively. And so that's the work we've been doing with the Million Mask movement. And I brought a card for everyone here to take like 100. But you can take definitely one with you. And if you're willing to write those 6 words anonymously, I think you will feel it as you think about, oh yeah, there's so much more to me than anybody could ever see. And if I recognize there's more to me than people can see, then maybe I realize when I meet people, there's so much more to them too. So that's what we try and do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Niobe.
Okay, so first of all, Mike and Ashanti, I have to respond. I'm that type of person. So Mike, I just think what's interesting to me, it made me so clear why we're a panel, but also we don't talk enough about, is that everything you said was relational. It's all about in relationship. It's all about forming meaningful relationships with each other. And to me, we don't actually make that obvious point, and make it explicit that it's all about relationships. Ashanti, Ashanti is my hero. I mean, he was in the movie with me, Mask You Live In. He's the star of the film by far. And right, Mark, right? You agree? Yeah. His work with young men is so effing powerful. And I've seen it, I've seen witness of it. He's gone into schools that we work in. We brought him into New York. He did work in schools with our team. The kids interviewed him. Didn't they interview you? These kids interviewed Ashanti about his experiences. I mean, it makes me emotional. It was so beautiful for the kids, but also for the teachers. So to me, to have someone like Ashanti in the world, I don't know Mike as well, I know Ashanti, but to have him in the world is just a blessing. Okay, so I would say the way I want to answer that question is to remind ourselves that killers are not born killers, rapists are not born rapists, Trump supporters are not born Trump supporters, and boys, meaning the stereotype of boys, are not born boys, meaning boys, stereotypes of boys are not born as a stereotype, they become boy, right? And Judy Chu writes about that. I want to do a shout out to her. That talks. I think her book, Mark, is called "Becoming a Boy." What's her book called? When Boys Become Boys, right? Which says everything in the title. So the idea is, what does that mean? We're not born a killer. We're not born a rapist. This is where my superpower is, which is I'm a developmental psychologist. So I know what we know about people from birth to 10, 20. I know that. I know all the research over the past. What we know in the research, not just my research, but in all the research, developmental science, is that we are born with the natural capacity. This is going to be a mind blower for you. Are you ready? For each other, where you see it in 4-year-olds. I've been sitting in a 4-year-old class the past year. It is stunning how much you see those little 4-year-olds take care of each other, check in with each other, want to know why the other person's feeling sad today or they're crying, why they're having a fit in the classroom. They want to know why, what upset them. They are caring creatures. We are caring creatures. We born that way. And the second thing is cooperation. You think 4-year-olds can't cooperate. Are you kidding me? I have to give you a scene that you can visualize. The Spanish teacher is talking to one of the little girls in the class, and she's asking her a word in Spanish, what the word means, and obviously the little girl doesn't know what the word means. You see everybody behind the Spanish teacher going, mouthing the answer, right, to the little girl so she gets it right. She doesn't get in trouble by the teacher. The boys and the girls are all mouthing the answer, and it's hilarious. But I think that's cooperation. They don't want this girl to be shamed by not knowing the answer to the question. So cooperation. And then finally, and this is the shout out, can you please tell me the person who's from Oberlin so I don't call him the person from Oberlin? Johnny? Okay, Johnny Cole. Okay, so this is a shout out to you. From an Oberlin to an Oberlin. Curiosity, so care, cooperation, and curious. I want to say this really loud because we've forgotten, we're so incurious at this point. Effing curiosity. The curiosity not just about the world, which is important obviously, the moon, the sun, why we have tides, etc., but also about each other, We're born that way. We want to know things like, these are the little kids' questions. Amazing to me. What's the name of your mother? That was one of the first questions that one of the little kids asked. I used to wear a necklace, it broke, but it was my favorite necklace. I had a little boy ask me, you wear that necklace every day, why do you wear it? They wanted to know everything, and my favorite story is a little boy says, do you have children? And I said, yes, I have a 25-year-old and a 22-year-old. He goes, boy or girl? And I say, older boy and a younger daughter. And then he looks at me, he goes, he's known me for 2 days. And he goes, I didn't know that. He's a little 4-year-old. I didn't know that. And I was like, oh my God. You're shocked that you didn't know I had children? Like you've known me for 2 days? But his look of like, I thought I knew you after 2 days, and I didn't know you had children. So that kind of curiosity of connection, that's our core, that's to Johnny, right? That's our core capacity to connect, is actually that, because what does that do when someone asks you a meaningful question and then asks the beautiful follow-up question about what type of children, how old they are. I mean, the follow-up questions, we know this from the data, you feel seen. And then if you do it mutually, I'm talking like a 5-year-old, because this is what a 5-year-old say. When it goes both ways, that's connection, right? That's connection. So care, cooperation, and curiosity are natural to us. Therefore, we don't have to teach it. We have to nourish it. Right? We have
That's
to
wonderful.
nourish it, right? So in our homes, in our schools, in our workplaces, in these spaces, in professional spaces, we have to nurture care, cooperation, curiosity. And we've been doing it. I'm going to just shout out to my program that I've been doing that we included Ashanti into, the Listening with Curiosity project we've been doing in schools for the past decade. With all schools across New York City. It's a 26-lesson curriculum, but we're also integrating it now into organizations where you're learning the practice. I'm now calling it relational intelligence, the practice of relational intelligence, which is the capacity to listen with curiosity to another person and understand, try to understand as best as possible how they see the world, and then it goes back and forth, and you allow me to see, right, you see my perspective. And this is the key thing, I want to say it very clearly. Not just the differences, but the similarities, and not just the similarities, but the differences. And then learn from each other in the similarities and differences. And that, to me, will save the world. And it sounds trite when I say that, but it really will save the world. Because then what happens is that we appreciate not just our similarities. We don't tolerate our differences. We appreciate, because we learn from our differences. Oh, you mean that by trust. Oh, I mean something different from trust. So tell me about a time you felt trust. And then you hear them say something that's totally different than how you would experience trust. And then you learn something about them, but you learn something about you.
About yourself.
Right? About yourself.
This is brilliant. I want to hear reflections on that concept, those 3 C's you mentioned. I think one of the things I wanted to ask you is, in the context of this, we're talking about connection. The question again was about low-hanging fruit, where each of you from your work, your expertise, see the opportunities to have an actionable impact on this crisis. It is such a timely conversation. I think we all know what we're reading about in the news, what people are experiencing, what your brother who's driving the Uber is experiencing, as you said. There's a lot of polarization. With the onset of technology, I think that the idea was to create these communities where you don't actually need to see and look someone in the eyes and talk with them and hear them and respond and see in their body how they're responding to you and do the same. But we're really seeing that I think was a mistake, and we need to reconnect in person. Now, part of the journey of our young people, and young boys in particular, is engaging authentically with their world, right? You talk about some boys learning to put on masks, right? We're going to get back to the masks. But I'll start with Niobe, and then everyone can respond to this. Niobe, your work deals with the idea of making sure that individuals, the term I think is stopping interrupting, right? Adults do not interrupt our young boys in their process of learning about themselves and the world. I'm a parent. I'm a soccer coach on the weekends. I'm always looking at the world and seeing where the obstacles are, where the pitfalls are, and trying to kind of guide my kids to avoid those to the extent that I can. But I also appreciate there's a value in them figuring it out themselves. So can you provide all of us here in the room who have some engagement with young boys with a framework for how to stop interrupting, but to also provide that guidance that is necessary to enable them to safely explore and develop their full selves?
Yeah, so I want to, I'm going to answer this in a way that answers your question but makes it slightly different. So I want to say it's the way we listen as adults to young people that's the problem. So we think we know the answer and they don't. That's a problem, because they actually provide the answer and they provide the solution. Just listen to them. I mean, they show us the answer, they show us the problem through their words and their action. Boys, by the way, say things like, you know this if you know Deep Secrets, the book I first wrote on boys. It might be nice to be a girl because then I wouldn't have to be emotionless. So they know the problem and they know the solution, which is to actually foster friendships, foster relationships, right? I mean, all those things that boys need. So we have to stop as adults thinking we know the answer. And if we actually turn our attention to not just that little kids are cute, because oftentimes when I tell that 5-year-old story, people say, oh, that's so cute. And I'm like, it's not cute. It's profound. It's profound what they're saying. It's not cute. I mean, it is a little cute. But the point is it's profound. So the idea is, if we shift our framework to what can we learn from young people, what can we learn from boys and young men, what we learn, and this is now answering your question, what we learn from them is not just about them, right? But we learn about us. We learn about all of us, regardless of our identities. We learn about them. And in my studies, they're mostly men of color. They're mostly young boys and young men of color, and from working class communities. And I would say what I want everyone to hear, they have taught the world about what it means to be human, not just what it means to be a boy. They've underscored the need for relationships, the need for friendships. They've revealed the relational intelligence that's natural to boys. So if we start listening with a curiosity and understand that what our sons say is not just about our sons, it's about their experience in the world, which means it's about being human in the world in an antisocial culture. We're social animals, but we're growing up in an antisocial culture. So that has a massive impact on boys and leads them to violence. It's a new book I'm writing. So I would say, listen, but I want to tweak one thing. Sometimes when they're going off on their Andrew Tate bet, actually I want you to interrupt. Right, and I want you to interrupt to get them back to what they know as a 5-year-old, right? And say a question like, "Does that sound right to you? Does that sound like the right thing to you?"
I use that.
Right?
I do use that. I use that. It's an opportunity
What do you
to
say?
open
Actually,
things
what
up.
do you say?
And I'm gonna interrupt this line
and go to Ashanti.
and go to Ashanti
Yeah.
on just to talk about the concept of the masks. I want to make sure we do have enough time for all of us to convene and commune. But what I do is I often ask the question, an open question, what do you think? How do you think you should address this problem?
Yeah.
Or how do you think your friend should have addressed that situation that got you so upset?
Yeah, beautiful.
And let them talk.
Yeah.
Let them talk it out.
Beautiful.
And they often come to the right conclusion. It's oftentimes one which I'm surprised that they reach.
Yeah.
And so we have to Ashanti's earlier point, respect them, respect their humanity. They're a lot cuter than we are, but they are fully human, and they know what's going on. And we need to allow them to tap into their inner wisdom. I love that. I wanted to ask you, Ashanti, this is a little bit, Jana perfectly scripted this, but this conversation is so beautiful and organic. I want to get back to the concept of the mask. So, as you know, this past week is New York Fashion Week. And I had the opportunity to go to a fashion event that was hosted by this organization that is doing work on economic development in Africa. And I am a first-generation American born of Cameroonian immigrants, born and raised on the south side of Chicago. The notion of the mask in West African culture it's a phenomenally powerful concept. And so it is, when we talk about masks in West African culture, it's not just something to protect yourself in the context of war or battle or uncertainty or insecurity. It is actually, it's a portal to another world. It's a connection to the ether. It's a connection to your ancestors. It's a connection to your roots. Right? And through the mask, your ancestors and your spirit, the spirit of that line continues to live. Often the juju, which is a character, will put on the mask and transform into an otherworldly being in celebrations and bring the spirits of the ancestors into the world for you to commune with. So I just, I'm putting that out there. I just wanted to hear your reflections on that and if there is any element of not just the mask that young people put on, saying take off the mask, but is there a concept whereby if we know we need to wear a mask at different points, we should put that mask on, but enable ourselves and empower ourselves to draw power and strength from our community, from our ancestors, our history, our legacy, our heritage, in community with other people. Just wanted to hear your thoughts on that concept of a mask, and I'm sure that there are ways in which you see that playing out. Yeah,
thank you. So imagine the last time someone asked you how you're doing. Maybe this morning, just walking in, we said how you're doing to someone, or maybe you said it back to them, a greeting. We often use how you're doing, which is actually a question, as a greeting, and oftentimes we don't even give people the time to answer. Or we have a boilerplate answer we always give. And what we see in the work around the mask is that if I can help you first understand that you may regularly wear a mask, I'm good, I'm fine, I'm great, I'm cool, how you doing, I'm chilling. you may do it not to deceive someone. I'm not even consciously doing it to like hold back information from you. I just know that on my general encounters with people, they only can handle so much. They only maybe deserve to hear so much, but they only are really asking something very different. And so I think that what we try to do with the concept of the mask is say, well, since we know it exists and we know we use it, how do we recognize the people who we can take it off with? Everyone doesn't deserve to know what you're going through or have to earn the right to do that. The vision of us is if we can just give you more tools to say, oh, I'm doing good. And I know that I'm telling you that because you're not really asking. I'm telling you that because you don't really care. I'm telling you that but I know that later today I'm meeting with my friends and we can talk about it. I know that every Tuesday at 7 to 10 p.m., I don't have to have it all. I don't have to be good and fine and great. That I can be like, today sucked, right? And I can say it without shame, without worry, without judgment, or without the worry of judgment. So there's going to be cards for everyone here. So take one. I have a pen for you too, as a matter of fact. The pen is yours to keep. But I invite you to today, the next time you ask somebody how they're doing, to let them know, if you really care about them, let them know that whenever they give that easy answer, that if you're ever not that, if you're ever not good and fine or cool, I'm here for you too. I think sometimes we just want to know that we're not going to burden people by talking about that we're maybe not doing as well as we often let on to believe. Yeah.
Wonderful. So I know we've got a couple minutes left, and I want, Mike, you to kind of respond to this final question first and maybe add a little extra on it. The room here is full of individuals who are influencers in their own right. We are people who speak to young men and we speak to boys, media executives, impact leaders, strategists, people who work in youth development, et cetera. So you're an impact strategist, you're an organizer, right? You're a doer. You're not just talking about this, right? You're a doer. What would be your call to action? And you can just tell us a little bit more about your approach to storytelling from that example, translating into action. But what would be your call to action for all the individuals in this room to help bridge that divide, to help our young men connect with themselves and connect with community?
Well, first off, I just want to say how honored I am to be on the stage with all of you and everyone in the audience. What Spirit wants me to share now is the power of acceptance. And I'm saying that because Maya Angelou once said, it's not what you say, it's how you make someone feel. I'm the only man in my family and my mom's side that's never served time in a cage. So when I go home and I meet with my family, I don't even use the word vulnerability. I use the word courage. I can't say patriarchy because they'll be like, yo, we're in a time where we live in binaries that aren't real. Even this conversation, gender like race is a construct. That's not even real. Ancestrally, since you're bringing up so much about, all of us come from Africa, so since you're invoking spirit, the most revered people ancestrally, historically, have been two-spirited people because they could see multiple perspectives. And there's a lot of talk about the manosphere, and even up on this panel, like if I was Andrew Tate and I'm in the room and I heard this panel, would I brought him closer? Maybe, maybe not. But the question is this, when we think about the manosphere, it's so divided. You know, the studies show this, Equimundo and everyone else who shows this, when folks, young men and men, myself, when we go to chat rooms and stuff, we're not going because we're misogynistic or racist or fucked up. We're going for simple questions. Like, what's your workout regime? Or I see my son, I have a 12-year-old son, so I see this in real time. He lives in a digital age. It's different than how I have come to be. And he doesn't know how to just talk to, like, hey, Papa, like, if I'm interested in a person, a woman or a man, whoever, I don't even know how to ask the question of, like, how do I approach somebody? And those simple questions, that's what leads someone to get, like, recruited, or these harmful narratives. And so my challenge to myself and to all of us is, how are we going to find that mirror in another person who we may despise? But since you're talking about spirit, the root of the one thing that we all have is breath, right? We all breathe. The root of breath is spirit. So if you believe that we are all connected, then you got to find the way to connect with that person, because at the end of the day, my own book, my own processing is healing the wounded child within me. And all of us are wounded. And so, but this circle, all of this advertising is like, we have to tell the full spectrum of the story. Because right now, mainstream news and outlets, and even what's dominating the airwaves, is one particular narrative and not the full story. And so, the challenge is, how are we going to dig deep to find that common ground? And again, know your boundaries, but at the same time, someone said it earlier, every action is a response to something. Violence makes sense because there's trauma and pain, but the only way to meet that is to see, to hear, to listen, and to accept. And I'll end just with this. My political home is the Zapatistas, which were indigenous people from southern Mexico, and they said, we have a belief that we can exist in a world where many worlds exist. And if you believe that, then we can find our common humanity once again.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Ashanti and then Niobe briefly, and then we can close.
I'll see you this afternoon so you can make your mask. There's pins here. Push yourself, trust yourself, and take something for people and and have really meaningful conversations this week. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be really fast, too. First of all, Mike, breaking down the binaries, disrupting the hierarchy of humanness and human qualities that we have, the hard over soft, white people over people of color, et cetera. That has to be at the front. And the way we do that is through relationships. So, building meaningful, connected relationships. So thank you for the disrupting the binary point. I would just say, I want you to remember this because you're going to forget it right after this conference. We are born naturally caring, cooperative, and curious. So we just need to nourish it. So I want you to be thinking about, it's not that men don't have something that women have. It's that it hasn't been nourished, right? So you have to nourish it. And this is a final point. We have to nourish it in ourselves, not just in others, because you can't nourish in others if it's not nourished in yourself. So start today to tap into your natural capacity to care, cooperate, and be curious about other people besides yourself, right? So that's all.
Wonderful. Niobe Way, Ashanti Branch, Mike Della Rocha, thank you so much. Thank you all.